Okay, we are in your packet. This is going to be page 13. Hold on. Yeah, page 13. So we're still solving, but this time it's inequalities. And remember, inequalities, there's like an infinite number of answers. So interval notation is coming back after we solve twice for these. So what you need to remember is, remember absolute value inequalities. If you notice these right here, these absolute value inequality symbols are open towards the bars. If they are open towards the bars, it's an or, always an or. If your inequality symbols are open towards the answer, it is always an and. So if the inequality symbols are open towards the answer, it is always an and statement. And I'll show you how to write that in interval notation. Okay, so for this first example, the first thing we're going to determine, we are always going to determine if it's an and statement or an or statement. We know this is an or statement because the absolute value bars, those are open towards the bars. So I'm just going to go ahead and solve this like it's an equation. Then I'm going to come back and address the inequality symbol. So remember, the first thing that you do, you isolate the absolute value bars, but for this example, they're already isolated. So again, we're going to do the original. I'm going to recopy the inequality sign. And then as usual, we're going to do the opposite. So remember, for the opposite, you change the sign of what was in the bars, never change the answer. Okay, so back over here to the original, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And I get 2x is going to be greater than a 4. So we know x is going to be greater than a 2 because we divide both sides by 2. Over here on the opposite side, we're going to add 1 to both sides. And we get a negative 2x, and that is going to be greater than a 6. And it is very important for you to remember one of two things. Here is how Ms. Harrington solves inequality symbols. What I do is I never solve a negative variable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch places with the negative 2x and the 6. If you don't want to do that, you can divide both sides by negative 2, but you have to remember to switch the inequality symbol. I used to always forget that. So I've trained myself to always solve for a positive variable. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this negative 2x, that's going to go to this side. Remember, when it goes to another side of an inequality or an equal sign, the sign changes. So this is going to be a positive 2x over here. The positive 6, it's going to switch places. It's going to turn into a negative 6. And I'm just going to bring down the inequality symbol. I don't have to worry about flipping the sign. All I have to do now is divide both sides by a positive 2. So once I divide both sides by a positive 2, I am going to get an answer of x is going to be less than a negative 3. So now it's time to put everything together and kind of analyze our answer. Remember, we need x to be greater than a 2, but at the same time, x is going to be less than a negative 3. And also, remember, this is an or statement. So if I try to graph this on a number line, let's just sketch a number line real quick. It can be a baby one. So remember, we are going to have like zeros right here. Our negative 3, of course, is to the left of 0. Positive 2 we'll put right here. If I graph these, I'm going to graph this one first. We know that x is less than a 3, so I would have an open dot on the 3, and I would shade where my x values get lower. For my original right here, I need my x values to be greater than a 2, so I would shade, of course, to the right. To put this all together, we are not using braces like we did for equations. We are using interval notation. So since this is an or statement, I'm going to write the word or, and then I'm just going to write these two pieces on both sides of my word or. So on the left side, remember I have an arrow pointing to negative infinity. So it is going to be negative infinity all the way up to a negative 3. Remember, this was not part underlined, so I don't use brackets. And now my flip side is going to be what we just did for this part right here. Or I'm so sorry. For this part right here. And that is going to be your positive 2. And remember, there's an arrow right here. So we're going to take that all the way to infinity. So that's going to be the answer. And I'm just going to check my work, make sure I did it as an or statement. And yep, remember, we know it's an or statement because the inequality was open towards the bars. And we're good on this inequality. So remember, your answers for inequalities, we're always going to write them as interval notation.